Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to thank and pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone and welcome to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. Let's get started. Since launching the show in October, we've heard from 8 incredible guests about 8 incredible topics. And as we're reaching the end of the year now, we thought we'd do a little recap about what we've learned and what we've experienced by talking to all of these guests. So going all the way back to our first episode, we spoke to Darren Finkelstein about goal setting and the importance of accountability. Darren was a wonderful guest. We had him in the studio in person, and he taught us about how having an accountability partner can help you reach your goals faster and help you manage your progress properly to stay continually motivated. His biggest practice tip was obviously to have an accountability partner. Whether that's possible or not is entirely up to you. That can be, your mum, sister, best friend, or actually having a professional. Darren himself is a professional accountability coach, but he also has an accountability partner. So he emphasized how it's important to schedule regular check-ins with your accountability partner to keep constant communication to understand where you are on the way to your goal and how that's going to affect your personal productivity. In our second episode, we spoke to Paul Miners. This was one of my favorite episodes. Paul was such a lovely guest and he had such an incredible energy and insights. I learned about Bitcoin, which was something that I didn't really know about before. And we spoke to him about procrastination, ironically, and how reevaluating our priorities can help us stay organized. Paul is incredibly passionate about organization. He learned, how to schedule things properly and how to understand his timetable from the age of, I think he said 16 years old. So he's been doing this since he was in high school. And his main suggested practice for preventing procrastination, which is something that I'm sure we all want to learn about, is micro-scheduling. This was something that was new for me as well. And it was about utilizing your calendar for time blocking and understanding how precious every moment of time is and how you're using it to be productive. That doesn't mean that you always have to be working as such, but it just means that you're not wasting time worrying about the future and you're actually being productive, whether that's working on your personal work or actually spending time with your family, watching a movie, doing those things that are still classed as being productive. In episode 3, we spoke to Donna McGeorge, who was wonderful, and she taught us about rejecting the traditional 9-to-5, which is something that is very trendy at the moment. And, everyone's doing that remote working and all this kind of stuff. So we learn about increasing workplace productivity. Donna's biggest tip was to create a clear distinction between work time and rest time. This is specifically or more likely for people who are working at home or people who are sort of doing that remote working, freelancing, those kinds of things. And this involves not working in certain spaces and places such as bedroom or the couch or places where you would spend time not working, if that makes sense. In episode 4, we spoke to Pei Fun Liem about budgeting and how implementing an effective budget routine can optimize our productivity. I personally love the tips that we got from Pei. She was very enthusiastic about money and budgeting, and not from a really analytical or kind of, I guess you would call logical aspect. It was a lot more practical in terms of, if you have kids, putting aside money and making a budget for them and all those kinds of things. So Pei recommended overall allocating money to certain areas of life as soon as income is received so that you know exactly how your budget is going to play out for the coming weeks. In our 5th episode, we spoke to email expert Steuart Snooks about organizing your emails to escalate self-productivity. Personally, I found this episode the most helpful for my daily life when it came to organizing my emails. And Steuart's recommended practice is implementing the 4 Ds, which is what I've done. So delegate, deal, delete, or date it, turning your inbox into like a dated to-do list. So this is very helpful for people who get lots of emails on a daily basis, whether you're running a company, you're freelancing, or you're just a parent who's receiving work emails and school emails and personal emails. So I found it very helpful implementing Steuart's recommendations. In our 6th episode, we spoke to Dr. Nicole Moshfegh. She was incredible. She told us about the science of sleep, and there is a science behind it, and how it influences our productivity during the day. So she recommends implementing 3 practices, which is what I'm doing at the moment. So sleeping at the same time each night, which doesn't sound like it would impact you that much, but definitely it is something that definitely influences how you feel when you sleep. And number 2 was implementing a bedtime routine. And 3 was engaging in a relaxation strategy at some point during the day. So this is sort of before you've even thought about sleeping, actually engaging in a relaxation strategy so that your brain and your body are kind of realigned and ready to take those extra steps and then go to sleep. Next up, we spoke to Dr. Elliott D. Cohen about perfectionism and how it affects our personal productivity. I think perfectionism is something that we talk about a lot in today's society, especially with that hustle culture. And as a recovering perfectionist, Elliott recommends the practice of work separation. This was very similar to what Donna spoke about in terms of separating your different areas of work life and personal life spaces. But Elliott spoke about arranging time to actually step away from work and practice areas where perfectionism is not possible. And that doesn't sound like it's something that's really plausible, but when you think about it, you can't perfect watching a movie, or you can't perfect taking your dog for a walk. Those are things that you have to do and accept as they come, and they create that balance and that flow. So Elliott's biggest recommendation when it came to dealing with perfectionism was, like I said, stepping out into areas where perfectionism is just not possible. In episode 8, we spoke to fellow LMSL host Dina Sargeant about goal setting and moving forward in life to reach your personal best. I loved this episode. Obviously, I work with Dina all the time, but being able to do an episode with her and actually delve into our personal thoughts as people who have absorbed so much information and research over the past couple months, we feel like it was definitely needed to kind of break down what we've learned. And we spoke about goal setting, and Dina's number 1 practice when it came to goal setting was first understanding how her surrounding environment is actually going to affect her outcomes and maximize her productivity. And I thought this was a really interesting aspect of goal setting that I don't think we talk about enough. So that's what we've learned so far in the past couple of months. But how does that go into practice exactly? I mentioned all those tips and everything that the experts recommended, but what actually happens when you do those things? So stay tuned, because next week I'm actually going to begin my month-long journey in experimenting with an expert practice to see how it affects my productivity. Thanks for listening. See you next week. You have been listening to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by the Life Management Science Labs. Listen to episodes from LMSL's 10 Life Management Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or other podcasting apps on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps others find us and us grow to bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at pp.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Tia Harmer. Thanks for tuning in.